guest. Joining me right now is former Florida governor and Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush. Good to see you, Mr. Governor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Maria.
So you have lost about half of your support, 50% of your support since July, Governor. How are you going to reverse that trend?
By talking about my record as governor of Florida, where we cut taxes, reduced the size of government, reformed everything under the sun, and the state was lifted up. Our economy grew at over 4% per year for my 8 years. That story is yet to be told, and when I tell it, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape.
I think you're right. That story is yet to be told. I read your op-ed about 4% growth, and I want to talk to you about some of your policies. Jobs and growth, the #1 issue for the American voters today. How do you plan to create jobs, Governor?
First of all, we have to fix a convoluted tax code that has all sorts of carve-outs and deductions and credits, but what we need to do is eliminate all that as much as possible, lower rates as far as possible, a 20% corporate tax rate, full expensing of all capital investing. That would create high-wage jobs. It's not just creating jobs. The Obama administration in the last few years, there have been jobs created, but they're low-income jobs. We need to have higher disposable income, and dramatic reform of our tax code is the first step. Dramatic change in how we regulate is the second part of this. And then embracing the energy revolution would be third. Fixing a broken immigration system. All of this has to be done in a comprehensive way to create higher growth and higher income for Americans.
Regulation is so important. And once again, we hear that over and over again from business people who say they're sitting on cash. They're not going to create jobs with this regulatory environment, from DoddFrank to ObamaCare to the EPA, et cetera. In terms of the tax plan, Donald Trump talked about his plan last night. Says he wants to raise rates on the wealthiest of Americans. Is that part of your plan as well?
Not at all. We lower rates to 28%, but we put a cap on the deductions, which higher income Americans take advantage of more than anybody else. Under our plan, people in the 1%, the 10%, the top 20% pay proportionally a little bit more. Everybody gets a tax cut, though, which is the important thing. And if you're making 40 grand with a family of 4, you pay no income tax under this plan. People that looked at this, conservatives at least, suggest that it could create a minimum of 50 basis points, a half a percentage point of growth over the next 10 years per year. That's the kind of approach we need. This shouldn't be about high income or low income. It should be about high growth so that people can rise up again. You have talked about 4% growth. Today, the IMF is out, Governor, saying 3.3% growth is just not realistic this year. And certainly next year, 3.8% is obviously not realistic at all. A lot of people questioned you're targeting 4%. What are we at right now, Governor? 2%? How are you going to get to 4%? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll never do it in the age of Obama with higher taxes, more uncertainty, more regulation, more top-down driven approaches to everything. I mean, if you look at the regulatory climate today with the rules related to water, the rules related to carbon emissions, the rules related to workforce, the financial markets, we'll never grow at 4%. But if you liberate our economy and create an environment where people can pursue their dreams as they see fit from the bottom up, we could grow at 4%. We've done it in the past. I just reject this pessimistic view out of hand. I think the left wants slow growth because that means people are more dependent upon government. I reject that. I believe that people want to rise up. They want the tools to achieve earned success, and how we tax and regulate really matters.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people just want opportunity. Keeping on regulation, you know, Eric Cantor joined us a little while ago. I know he's a big supporter of yours, sir. You know, he said all these expectations that you can get so much done in government are wrong. For example, on Obamacare, you know, how could John Boehner promise that they were going to, you know, turn over Obamacare and change it when, in fact, he needed 60 votes in the Senate? What's your alternative to Obamacare?
Well, we'll lay it out in the next 3 weeks, and it's to move back to a consumer-driven system where you have low-premium, catastrophic coverage, where it's portable, where people can have more than one choice, and where they are more empowered to make decisions themselves. We have to lower the cost of health care to lower the cost of health care insurance. And the Obamacare approach is actually creating higher costs for the whole system, and it's suppressing wages. If we want to create more income for more people, then we have to have a dramatic change. And I believe repealing Obamacare, beyond that, we need to come up with an alternative that embraces conservative values, and I'll do that in the next 3 weeks.
And we know that the implementation, many of the issues around Obamacare really will hit business next year in 2016. What kind of a year economically would you expect as these rules take effect?
I think we're in for the new normal of 2% growth if the progressive liberal economic policies continue on. But I do believe that there's the potential of an explosion of investment in our own country, creating high-wage jobs where we'll lead the world. This year, we'll get about 2% growth again. And people can't be satisfied with that because it does put a lid on people's aspirations, particularly young people. We should be aspiring to a much higher growth rate for the next generation because they're stuck right now.
Yeah. What about the issue around Dodd-Frank and the financial services industry, Governor? I mean, you're seeing Dodd-Frank dictate balance sheets. Look at a company like General Electric selling 50% of its earnings because they don't want to be deemed systemically important and have to go along with all of the costs that come with that. What do you want to do to Dodd-Frank?
Well, I think it needs to be replaced. Maria, you're hanging out with the big dogs, where the big banks and companies like GE. They have huge compliance departments, accounting departments, lobbyists, lawyers. They've actually grown in size. GE doesn't want to be a financial services business, and so they're making adjustments. I focus on the community banks. There's been 2 of them set up since Dodd-Frank has been passed. And if you talk to people in Iowa, Nevada, New Hampshire, where I hang out a lot, in South Carolina, what they'll tell you is that none of this massive amount of rules on top of everything they do is creating credit for the next generation of job creators. It's creating credit for communities to be able to be successful. So I think we need to move away from this top-down driven system that creates massive uncertainties and costs and move back to common sense regulation that is from the bottom up.
Yeah.